Almost every photographer I work with, I ask them this same question. What would you like the viewer to feel? And pretty much they all sort of stumble on it and they start saying things like, well, there's a lovely sunset, or there's leading lines. They describe the composition as what they see, not what they feel. And the reason is because that's much harder. The reason I ask them that question, because it's much harder. And it's because it's what the best photographers do. But if I'm honest, while I have a sense of it myself when I'm taking a photograph, I don't often do it. Not in the right way, not in a way that I could explain to you in one sentence what I want you to feel when I take an image. You see, the real discipline is being able to say it out loud. I mean, you might be saying it out loud in your head, but if you can say that out loud in just one sentence before you take the photo, that's where the discipline really lives. So my goal today is to practice what I preach. I'm going to be accountable to you because I'm going to tell you in one sentence, before I take the image, what I want you to feel. I want to show you the process and I want to show you where it gets uncomfortable, because I think it does get uncomfortable. And I think that discomfort is exactly what most photographers avoid. So I'm back at Morecambe Bay today, and if you saw my video from last time, it's a similar location, and in all honesty, I wasn't entirely happy with what I got. So I'm going to make sure I do that today. Before I raise the camera, I'm going to sit and think about what I want you to feel. A photographer I keep coming back to, Michael Kenna, British photographer brought up in the northwest of England, a bit like me. But what he's famous for is very minimalist, particularly black and white landscapes. And what I want to do today is use what I understand about Michael Kenna's way of using this question and connect it to the practice that I tell my students to do and that I'm using today. There's three parts to this. The first is why this question is harder than it sounds. The second is what Kenna's work tells us about using it deliberately. And then the final bit is attempting to answer the question itself. And the last part, if I'm honest, is the one I'm least certain about. Description comes easy. I can tell you this is a big wide open bay, that there's a Lake District hills in the background, there's boats, fishing boats in the foreground, a few boys. There's things I might want to use like as leading lines, like the pier. But the gap between describing what the image is and what you want the viewers to feel is where most of us get stuck. And that includes me more often than I'd like. The reason it's hard isn't technical. It's because it makes you accountable. Now you have something to test the image against, and that image might not pass the test. And then what are you going to do? You've got to come back and take it again on a different day in different conditions. And will you still get what you want? And that's why most of us keep this question vague and don't commit to it. We wait till we're back at home and look at it on the big screen and then see if we can make it work. But that isn't how the best work gets done, and I think this is why Michael Kenna might be such a master at it. He's got a vision before he started. He's got the feeling sorted of what he wants to create, and he knows exactly what he's going to do before he sets up his tripod. You see, Michael Kenna returns to the same locations over and over again. If you look at his work, you'll see places like Hokkaido in Japan, the River Seine, and he does this over years, maybe even over decades. And when I look at the interviews I can find about him, what strikes me is that he isn't doing this because he didn't get the shot. It's because his understanding of what he wants people to feel is continually developing. And what most importantly that tells me is that he's treating his emotional response to a place as something worth returning to, as something worth investing in. The way many of us would invest in our technical skills or improving our processing, but he's got a deliberate practice of developing his emotional eye alongside his technical one. Now, I always ask my students just to write down what their emotional response was at the place they took their photograph. But do I do it? In all honesty, I can't remember the last time I did. I might be thinking it, I might have a sense of it, but I never actually put it into practice. So that's one of the things I'm going to do today. Just one thing before I go and take this shot. If you find something resonating with you here, that the gap between the technical knowledge you have, but trying to put everything together so that you feel like you have a consistent collection of photos, then I've developed a free scorecard that will help you find out why you're struggling. It'll just take you 2 minutes to fill in, and it might give you a useful insight into your photography style and what you should be looking at developing. I'll leave a link in the description. So this is the part where I'm asking my students to write down what they feel. And now I'm doing it. What do I want someone to feel from this image? I'm going to attempt the photo now. As you saw, I sort of sat and contemplated this scene for a while, but my eye kept getting drawn to one thing in particular. This rather battered yellow fishing boat out here. And this is what I wrote down about it. It's like me, it's old, weathered, but it's persistent. It might not be clear where it's been or where it's going to go, but it perseveres. So, to sum up, what I wanted the image to show is really perseverance and something that's survived a bit of life. And when we get to our age, we've all got a few creases and bruises. So my next decision is more technical. How can I show that? And I'm going against every instinct that I normally have when I take these photos. I want to do a long exposure. And normally when you take a picture of something like this, I would probably blend two shots. One taken on a short exposure to keep the boat nice and sharp. Tide's coming in, it's just bobbling about on the water, and it's probably going to move around as the currents move. But I saw an image of actually Michael Kenna's in Venice, where he did the opposite, and he just let the gondolas become blurry. I'll put it on the screen. And I'm going to do that today because part of what I want to show is that fuzzy image, you know, we're all a bit battered by life. I don't want it to be sharp and clear. And the only other thing I've got to figure out is what my exposure time is going to be. I'm going to try two options, one about 5 minutes and one about 15 minutes, and see which gives me what I want, because I really like the water to be silky smooth. I want the hills and the horizon. You know, I made a little sketch before I even got my camera out of what I wanted to feel. I want the horizon and the hills and stuff just to be faint in the background. And I think doing that really long exposure will help me achieve that. Did I get what I wanted? Well, maybe that's something you should let me know in the comments. Let me remind you of what I was aiming for. Something that was a little bit old and weather-beaten and battered, but had survived the persistence of time, was still able to do its job. I guess if I sum it up in one word, perseverance. From my point of view, I think I got pretty close to it, especially with the longest exposure shot I took, which was 14 minutes. That's the big difference. When I look at this shot now, I'm not asking questions like, is it sharp? Because I deliberately wanted it not to be sharp, but I'm asking myself, have I got across the feeling that I wanted to convey? And that's the most important question to ask, because I sat down before I picked up the camera and I decided what the image was going to make the viewer feel. And that really influenced every decision I made from that point onwards. It was one question, one image, and my honest response to it, and an honest attempt to connect the two before pressing the shutter. It's not a complicated thing to do, and it might seem difficult at first, but I'm pretty sure, just like the technical aspects, if you keep practicing it, it'll become second nature. And I'm also sure it'll change and definitely improve what you come home with. And if you find there's a gap between your technical competence and what you're coming home with, then why not try the free scorecard that I mentioned before? There's a link in the description. If you feel like trying this, I'd really love to know how you get on, so let me know, or even share an example image or two, and we can see if we can guess what feeling, what you were trying to create in a word or even a sentence. In the meantime, go and have some fun with your camera, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.